pushing these conservatives and libertarians out of California. A lot of ideological differences as well. For that, I want to bring in Young Americans for Liberty analyst Kristin Tate. You know, Kristin, we saw Elon Musk talk about it. We know the Peloton founder. They moved to Colorado, but it was the same sort of thing. This sort of arrogance in Silicon Valley that I think has made San Francisco unlivable, and not just for billionaires, ironically, more so for just regular folks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. People were already fleeing these big cities and blue states prior to this year, but 2020 has really accelerated that trend as people are able to work from home. Taxes and regulations, I would argue, are the biggest piece of this puzzle, Charles, but quality of life is critical as well. Public schools are failing in many of these big cities. The cost of living is exorbitant. The pushes to defund the police and ease up on prosecutions have meant that violent crime is skyrocketing. And meanwhile, you have government officials who have shown flagrant disregard for their citizens by shutting down businesses and schools, often with no warning and no data to back up those orders. So unless the public officials in these cities and states turn things around fast, this trend will continue and it will only pick up. And you know what's really sad about it is it's the most vulnerable who are left behind in these big cities who will be hurt most, because tax revenue to fund basic services, welfare program, and infrastructure will all be hollowed out. The wealthy will bring their capital and jobs to other places, and that may benefit places like Houston and Miami, but it's really going to be to the detriment of low and middle income workers in places like LA, San Francisco, and New York.
Yeah, quality of life is a part of the issue. Then, of course, a lot of these companies set up these large campus settings, and they drive the price of everything out. Apparently, there's a company called Spectrum Location Solutions. 2018 to 2019, 660 companies moved facilities, over 700 facilities out of California into Texas. Your average rent in Dallas is $1,200. It's almost $4,000 in San Francisco. Who could afford that? And so it's not just because of the billionaires tax, which is dumb, or the 13% individual tax and 8%, 9% corporate tax. But do you think California will get the message? Because earlier this year, Gavin Newsom seemed to brush off the threat of an Elon Musk leaving.
I don't think that they are getting the message, unfortunately, and it's not just San Francisco, it's New York and Chicago as well. Unfortunately, the people running these places often just double down on the policy that created the problems in the first place. For example, voters in San Francisco just passed an overpaid executive tax that's going to soak many of these large corporations that end up staying there. Bill de Blasio up in New York has said that he's going to double down with higher taxes on earners who stay in the city and don't leave. So a lot of people in all income brackets are moving to Texas. I'm in Texas, Charles, and I can tell you there are lots of people who are worried that as these companies come down here and bring their workforces, it could have significant political impacts on these traditionally red states like Texas and Florida, because, on one hand, these trends are vindicating to the conservative policies down here. On the other hand, all of a sudden you have these huge workforces, many of which are overwhelmingly liberal, moving down here.
The psychology of that continues to blow my mind. You got pushed out of a city because of those policies, and then you go somewhere else where there's prosperity and you vote in those same policies. I'll never figure that one out. Kristin, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So how has today's vaccine